Hey guys, what's up? My name is Ted, and welcome back to another episode of my new YouTube podcast on the Idaho 4 entitled 2 a.m. is a Dark Hour. The title of this episode is The Hair in Ethan's Hand, Part 2. There's obviously a Part 1, and there are also two parts called Ethan Was Immobilized. If you haven't watched these episodes, I encourage you now to go back and watch those other three parts as this fourth part will make a lot more sense. So, why a part two to the hair in Ethan's hand? There's been a resurgence of interest in this topic and a lot of discussion due to a recent interview. And quite frankly, there's been a lot of misinformation circulating on this topic for weeks and weeks. So, I wanted to discuss it quickly and try to bring more clarity to what the defense might posture and how specifically a defense expert was posturing this recently in another interview. So the last time we spoke, we were talking about Ethan and Xana's attacks, and that Xana was attacked first in her bedroom, and Ethan was attacked shortly afterwards. And due to the resulting blood transfer or lack thereof, that their attacks were essentially contained to two separate and distinct parts of that bedroom. Xana's attack was contained to the west end and floor of her bedroom, while Ethan's attack was essentially contained to the bed. And what we believe is that during Ethan's attack, he was initially held down on the bed by likely two assailants, and the first of his devastating wounds were blows to both legs, explaining why he never got up from the bed, even though Ms. Kernodle was being savagely attacked and tortured just feet away from him. So now that we've done that quick recap, let's really hone in on this hair. And I just want to present a couple scenarios to you for you all to consider and draw your own conclusions. So as we know, we'll discuss a little bit more in just a few minutes, that we know that there was hair drenched in blood found in Ethan's hand, on the bed frame, and on the floor just adjacent to where his hand was residing. And we know, according to Dr. Turvey, that the hair that he pulled dried in blood to the bed frame was described as being blonde or brown in color, longer in length. He said it could be male or female. And we know that Mr. Koberger had essentially been excluded. So let me present to you scenario one. And I've got hair as a prop here. I know it's a lot, but just to give an idea. In a previous video, we had discussed the scenario that as Mr. Chapin might have been taken down, that he would be reaching out for one or two of those assailants and actually grabbed hair from one or both of those individuals in the course of being taken down on the bed. So that's scenario one, that could be hair from an alternate perpetrator in his hand. So scenario two might be that could be Ethan's own hair that we see on the bed frame and on the floor. We know that from the autopsy data that Ethan sustained two scalp injuries, one on either side of the head. One was a stab wound, the other was an incised wound. So the hair that we see essentially being released on the bed or dropped down onto the floor could also be Ethan's own hair as a result of him grabbing at those wounds over the course of his attack, in excruciating pain. Of course, scenario three, which I'll present quickly, is it could be a combination of both. There could be alternate perpetrator hair mixed with his own hair as a result of, again, grabbing for one of those individuals or grabbing at his own injury over the course of the attack. And why all of this hair is important, we obviously know from the autopsy there was one hair logged in his hand, physically in his hand. We haven't seen crime scene imagery, but that's what we know based on what is publicly available to date. But the hair that's on the bed frame and down on the floor is something that could have been released and likely was released from his hand over the course of the attack or after the attack. His hand muscles would relax as the attack progressed. And then whilst being moved, possibly, some was dropped down on the floor, or that could have been dropped down on the floor literally during the course of the attack, again, as his hand muscles relaxed, as he was losing strength. So now that I presented all those scenarios, let's break down this hair individually and talk about it more and why testing of this hair is so important. And let's get right into it. So let's quickly break down what we know based on crime scene imagery and legal disclosures publicly available to date. We know there was hair found in Ethan's hand, released onto the bed frame, and also likely dropped onto the floor by Mr. Chapin during or after the attack. We also know none of this hair was actually tested for nuclear or mitochondrial DNA. Microscopic comparison of a single hair strand is not adequate analysis for literal clumps of hair found in and by a victim's hand, drenched in blood at a quadruple homicide crime scene. The actual DNA testing is precisely what Dr. Turvey was requesting. A perfectly reasonable and ethical ask given the parameters just described to you. All of this hair needs to be tested for DNA and properly identified immediately.